My sister-in-law kept making racist comments to me, so I exposed her, and it ruined her career. After we left, apparently this caused a massive fight with my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and my other sister-in-law taking my side while my father-in-law and Sarah were both saying it was a joke but kind of true, and that I was being too sensitive. The extended family somehow got wind of this, and now everyone is arguing and taking sides, with my wife even getting texts from some of her cousins apologizing for Sarah's behavior. Despite being on my side, my wife is begging me to apologize so that the fighting will stop, but I refuse to because screw Sarah and her blatant racism. My wife has also informed me that now Sarah may be in trouble at work and she's blaming me for it. Apparently one of her coworkers heard her rant about what happened and reported it to management. Also, one of my wife's cousins found my story and put it on Sarah's Facebook wall going, "This is you, right?" Her Facebook friends are starting to comment with things like, "If this is you, Sarah, then I'm disappointed." I think Sarah's still at work. Things might be hitting the fan soon, and now my wife is pissed too. After a few days, I was considering taking my post down as it didn't want to cause irreparable damage, and even though I hadn't changed my mind about Sarah, I didn't think it was right to have this follow her around. But then out of nowhere, I got a voicemail from my father-in-law, who I'll be calling Doug from now, saying my presence was only being tolerated up until this point, and threatened a world of hurt if I didn't delete this post. I decided to keep my post up, and if you're still reading this, Doug, I'm very disappointed in you. You're better than this. My wife also got a call from her sister. Sarah started screaming and crying at her the moment my wife picked up and said that she had just been demoted because of her chink husband. Apparently, some of her coworkers have her on Facebook and showed the post to management, which combined with her earlier rant, double whammied her back to being a line cook, and now she might get fired. My wife told her to go screw herself, and is now completely on my side after taking the verbal abuse from Sarah as opposed to being mostly on my side. My wife is still the opposite of happy, though. My wife called her mother and asked her what the hell was going on with her dad. Her mom was confused, so my wife played back the voicemail I had on my phone, and apparently my mother-in-law literally just walked away from the phone without hanging up and started screaming at Doug. Sarah's Facebook has now devolved into a mess of arguments and war with family and friends jumping in. Suffice to say, it's been kind of nuts this past week. My wife and I had to turn off social media for a bit because of the hellfire caused by her cousin putting my post on Sarah's Facebook page. Some people even tried to call the restaurant I work at to get me fired as retribution, but luckily everyone there is 100% on my side. Or, as my boss put it, screw Sarah. Screw those racists. Screw all of them. I guess it didn't help them that half the calls involved threats, screaming, and more racial slurs. We didn't hear any updates from her family, even though we assumed things hit the fan after my mother-in-law found out about Doug's threatening voicemail. By the way, I'm still disappointed in you, Doug. But things changed on Sunday night when my mother-in-law suddenly showed up at our door with overnight bags. After we took a moment to help unpack and calm down, she spilled the beans on everything. Apparently, my mother-in-law and Doug were already having trouble in their marriage, and it was only made worse with a certain 2016 presidential election without this getting too political. I'll just say that she's a Democrat, and he had apparently gone more far-right since then. Seems that a line was crossed with the Kung Pao incident and his voicemail. When he refused to apologize for anything, typical Doug, she asked for a divorce and he went berserk. She didn't feel safe there, so that's when she came over because my brother-in-law and my other sister-in-law live out of town. You may have been able to tell already, but the extended family was largely arguing, fighting, and divided along political lines for a few years now, and my cousin's Facebook post was likely just the light to set off the powder keg. According to my mother-in-law, the fallout has allegedly already led to some breakups, excommunication of some family members, and even an argument that ended with police involvement. According to my mother-in-law, Sarah came over to her place on Friday. The writing was on the wall and she was basically forced to quit. Despite her trying to start from scratch as a line cook, the entire staff turned against her. Nothing was coming back from the dish pit for her, and she was getting the cold shoulder. I will admit that she's a great chef, but they took no chances since it turns out, and I kid you not, they're partly owned by a Chinese investment company. Found this hard to believe and didn't want to add this detail, but it turned out to be true after some research, but I won't say any further for privacy. Word also got around in the local industry, and Sarah is essentially blacklisted from high-end establishments. She's now considering selling her home and moving to find work. As much as I don't like her and found her behavior horrifying, I didn't intend for this to happen, so I've reached out to some buds in other states to see if they had any openings. Whether or not she wants to take it is up to her, and no, she has not apologized for anything either. But I still want to be a decent person to her. It sure as hell doesn't feel like a happy ending. Perhaps bittersweet justice, but that's all I can give you. This next story is an unthinkable situation to have happened with no option being the best. My sister had an abortion to save my life. I was very sick 4 years ago and was in need of a liver transplant. My situation was that it was very unlikely that I would get one in time. At that time, my sister was pregnant. I didn't know as it was early, less than 2 months. My situation was getting worse and my sister decided to have an abortion, and then 2 months later, we did the transplant surgery. I never knew about the pregnancy. All I knew was that she gave me half of her liver. My sister and her husband divorced a year later. I didn't know the truth until yesterday when my mom slipped up about an abortion that my sister had. I asked her about it and she told me everything. She told me that my sister made her promise not to tell me and she failed that promise. My sister was very happy, and my brother-in-law was a decent guy. I knew they were looking forward to having children. They were great together. She always told us how lucky she was to have found him. Apparently, at the time of their decision, my sister and her husband had a great disagreement. He didn't want her to have the abortion and risk the transplant surgery, and was hopeful that my situation might sort itself out without my sister's help. The chance was very small, but it was there. My sister disagreed. They couldn't convince one another, and my sister did things anyway without his blessing. They tried working things out after the surgery, they went to counseling, they even tried to have another baby, but they couldn't get themselves to do it. He couldn't forgive my sister, and she wasn't all that apologetic, so they ended up separating and eventually divorcing. My sister isn't happy now. She hasn't been since the surgery. She never told me the real reason for her divorce. She told me that they were after different things. I just learned things from my mom. I asked my mom if my sister still thinks she did the right thing. She said, "She's not sure." I can't stop feeling guilty. My sister saved my life but destroyed her own life doing it. She had to abort the baby she definitely loved and looked forward to, and did that knowing that it would probably end her marriage as well. I was ready to go at that time. I had accepted my fate, and I was at peace. She should have just let me. My brother-in-law should have told me so I would have talked her out of it. I'm surprised he didn't. I can't feel anything but to hate myself. I don't know what to do. Should I talk to my sister? What should I tell her? Should I keep my mouth shut and pretend that I don't know? I'm not sure if I'll even be able to look into her eyes and not show that I know. I just don't know what in the world I should do. Update. The next day after my first post, I came back and read everything again. My instinct before the post was to hate myself and wanted to go to her and tell her that she shouldn't have done it, but you helped me understand that it would do no good. So I decided to go to her, tell her how much I love her, how I owe my life to her, and that I know everything. It wasn't about me hating myself for the damage it caused to my sister. It was about me doing all I could to help her heal all the remaining wounds and move on. So I texted her and went to her place the next night. I couldn't stop the tears when I saw her and just went and hugged her. She asked what was up, and I told her that I knew. That was when she started crying, too. We talked a lot that night. I told her that I love her and that every second that I have now is because of her and her sacrifice. I told her that our parents gave me life for 18 years, but she gave me a lifetime. I didn't say anything about whether she should or shouldn't have done it, only how much I value and appreciate what she did for me and how much I treasure having a sister like her. She talked to me about her decision-making. She told me that it was never a doubt for her. She said if she hadn't done it, she would have resented herself, her husband, and her child for the rest of her life. She said that if time goes back, she'd do the same thing in a heartbeat. She told me that right before the abortion, her husband put his and her hands on her belly and asked her to feel their baby and not do this. But she came to me and put her hand on my chest to feel my heartbeat. I don't remember it. And that's when she had zero doubt that she would do whatever it took to save me. I think I have the best sister in the world. I asked why she didn't tell me sooner, and she said because she didn't want me to feel guilty. She thought that she could carry this burden herself. She said her marriage was dead the second she did the abortion, but she said she'd do 100 abortions and divorces if it meant saving my life. It was amazing. We couldn't help but hug each other every couple of minutes. We talked for hours, and talking made both of us feel free. In the end, she told me she made a mistake keeping it from me since I understood it well. We made a couple of promises to each other. We're going to help each other move forward from this. I'm going to help her, and push her, when necessary, to get treatment for her depression. We're going to do things with each other every week, and when she's ready, she's going to start dating again. I texted her on Saturday telling her to free her schedule for Sunday as I wanted to take her somewhere. Didn't tell her where. I took her to an amusement park. This is the same park that she took me when I was 11. We haven't been there ever since. That's like half of my life. That day was great. She took me on all the rides, and we had a wonderful time. I told her that we're going to be kids again and let go of everything and have fun like children. It was so nice. We took some of the rides that we took 11 years ago. It was amazing. When I drove her back home at night, she thanked me, gave me a long hug, and told me that this was her best day in probably 5 years. We're both doing much better. The truth brought us together, and we're helping each other move on. Even though it's been such a short time, she looks much happier. If anyone deserves happiness in life, it's her, and I'm sure she will find it. I'm sure she'll find the right person when she's ready, and she will have kids, and I'll do everything I can to be the world's best uncle to them.